going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Bodacious Rant with Burn and Rye. Oh, man. This is one of those shows that it feels so weird how long it took for a second season to come. And now it's even weirder that season 3 is right behind it a year after. If you haven't guessed what we're talking about with the thumbnail and everything, we're talking about Invincible season 3 with, from Robert Kirkman, who wrote the comics and did the show. So what Burn and I are going to do, since this is like the season review, as usual, we'll go ahead and give you our general thoughts and rantings on it. And then we'll get into some spoilers a little bit. If you do happen to like this video, feel free to give us that thumbs up just to show your support. Ring the bell to stay up to date for notifications and when we drop a video. And, of course, subscribe just to join the ranting community and crew. So it's always nice to have you guys. So this one takes place pretty much right after season 2, in which Mark is, still learning his ways as a superhero. And not only does he have to navigate kind of being an adult, he also has his little brother to contend to, his mom, and, figuring out his relationship with Eve, but also growing threats and actually training to combat those threats. Because if you've seen the last 2 seasons, Mark has gotten his ass handed to him almost every time he's been in a fight. So he definitely needs work on that. And having read the comics, it has been a couple years since I've read through all 3 compendiums, where I was literally just like back to back to back. So I definitely recommend those. Those are on Amazon, or you could probably find them at maybe your local comic shop or Barnes and Noble or something. I actually did that with The Walking Dead as well, because they're all so great. So this one was actually pretty on point with the season. I think Kirkman, not only having doing the comics, he's definitely using the show as a way to streamline his story. Because with comics and stuff like that, if you really think about it, there's a lot of fillers in the stories with the characters and some other scenes that, do they really need to be there? And the comics are from like 20 years ago at this point. So it has been a minute since he's kind of finished them. And I think this season's no exception. I know last one had a bit of a rocky start, but this one, like every episode, I felt like was awesome and hit the ground running. So I'm definitely going to give this one a 5 out of 5 as a whole. And we'll talk about some of my favorite moments in the spoiler section. But if you guys are kind of in that zone with me where I don't know how I felt about it after last season, definitely watch this one, because it will bring you back to it. And especially for those who read the books, it's getting good. So, Burn, what did you think about this season overall? Because again, why don't you fill people in on how you felt last time,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just as like a quick recap, I was a little bit disappointed in last season 2, not only because of that awkward mid-season break that they took in between the first 4 episodes and the last 4 episodes, but it felt like a lot of the storytelling in the first season was so gripping and so like entertaining from beginning to end, that once we got to the second season, it felt like a lot of those narratives sort of just kind of were dragged out, or they didn't feel as emotionally satisfying as they were in the first season, especially coming off the ending for the first season and having waited so long for that. It was hard to walk away from season 2 not feeling a little bit disappointed. So, the wish was for this season, to not repeat those same mistakes. And I gotta agree with you. I feel like this is definitely a return to form, closer along the quality that we got in season 1, where we're really focusing in on Mark and all the other heroes as characters, and we're really exploring these different themes of what it means to be a superhero, especially in this universe in particular, where being a superhero is far more fatal to the person than we see in a lot of these other comic book properties. So yeah, him having to contend with all these new threats and having to prepare himself, and like you said, trying to figure out how to be a superhero, it just made for a very compelling season of TV here. And from beginning to end, I was very much into it. I thought they did a fantastic job with, following up those threads that they did set up last season and paying them off in a much more satisfying fashion this time around. And not having to wait in between batches of episodes was definitely good for the pacing. And it felt like like you said, it didn't feel like there was a wasted moment in all these 8 episodes this season. So yeah, I mean, for me, this one's gonna be a 4 out of 5. It's not quite out of 5 for me, just because the first season is sort of that standard that I'm comparing all the subsequent seasons to, and it doesn't reach quite that level. But there are a lot of moments here that do get up there for sure, and I think this is a really really great season of TV. And if people have any reservations of watching it, throw those away because this is really good stuff we're getting here.
Yeah, exactly. Again, like I'm really excited to see what we're gonna get next. I know I said that last time, so it's gonna keep getting better. Um, for those of you who haven't watched it all, this is probably about the time you're gonna want to tune out because again, I'm gonna just basically talk about my favorite moments and highlights, which are gonna be pretty spoilers, especially if you haven't read the comics. And yeah, so we're gonna get into it. If you have watched the show, stick around because we're gonna do that. And yeah, for those of you who haven't, we'll see y'all next time. But yeah, like I said, I think overall, I think the animation. I'm just gonna get that out of the way real quick. I think it was better. I definitely noticed a jump in it in the last episode with the conquest fight, especially because you pointed out to me, and I was like, oh, now I see it, and because that was the animation that they teased before season 2. Like that's the improvements we were gonna get, and it's like you wait till the last episode to do that, but at the same time, it is one of the more epic fights that Invincible goes through in comics and stuff. It's up there, so it is. I'm kind of glad they pulled out the stops for that. Again, I have no real gripes for it. I was just more upset about last season because how we waited 3 years for it, and then all of a sudden it's like this is the same thing. Like what was the point of waiting this long and then doing that stupid mid-season break? But um
Yeah, I mean, I'm at the same place with you in terms of the animation. Can it be better? Definitely. But it's not one of those things where the animation when the show is the thing that's going to determine me liking it or not. For me, the much more compelling thing is the characters, it is the story. Do I wish all of it could look like the last 2 episodes this season? Definitely. But, it's kind of one of those things where I guess I'll take what I can get at this point, considering the amount of time we've had to wait for it. But yeah, all things considered, I would like it to be better. The fact that it isn't, I'm not going to lose sleep over it, basically.
No, yeah. Again, it is just more of the principle of like you're gonna hype it up that, oh, we took a little bit longer to do the animation, all this stuff. It's like okay, but it really hasn't improved. So what was the point? But anyways, one of my favorite moments and episodes in this was episode 3 where. Or 2 or 3, one of the two. Basically, whichever Cecil's backstory was in, because I don't remember reading that at all in the comics. So it was actually really nice to see a young Cecil, especially with a full head of hair and stuff like that. I thought that was like, oh shit, that's right. Of course, he has long hair now, but I'd never noticed it. Um, and Walton Goggins, he's just amazing in general, especially the voice acting, and just I like that how Mark he's at this crossroads right now where he is questioning everything he's been doing, especially after killing Angstrom Levy last season, or he thought so at least. It really tore him apart that he's kind of on that traditional superhero mentality of like we don't kill people for whatever reason, and it's like no, it's a very gray area with everything, and that's what I love about the Invincible universe is that there's so much gray, and he's navigating that. He is kind of gonna get to that point, but I like that he was really conflicted with that. And then with Cecil, how he realized he brought in Sinclair from the first season to create those killbots. I just like that Cecil was almost the exact same way when he was younger. Just a normal agent. Like, no, we don't work with criminals or murderers or psychopaths. But again, it's a very gray area where hey, people can change, or if you know how to manipulate them or use them for the greater good, why not, especially in a world of superpowered beings that you normal people can't stand up to, especially after we saw the destruction that Nolan did at the end of season 1. So it was very valid, and I just really liked that episode. I mean, how did you feel about that one, especially because you still haven't read the comics, right? So I don't know how you felt about that one.
Yeah, no, I still haven't read any of the comics. I again, I just kind of want to experience this show as like as a new audience member. So, I haven't really. I've tried to stay away from a lot of the things that common people are saying about the show, or like things that are coming in the future. So I can just kind of experience it for what it is. So, but yeah, I think that central theme that spans throughout the whole season of Mark having to battle with his like morality, whether when is it okay to kill, is it if it's okay at all, him having that experience of with his own dad, the first season, and seeing all the destruction that he could do. It seems like he's holding himself back in the fears that he was going to become like his father, so that's why he doesn't take that extra step. But to have not only um, um, Walton Goggins' character Cecil, I don't know why that escaped me for a minute there, but to have Cecil on one end and to have Oliver on the other end, just sort of challenging that aspect of of like hey, sometimes you got to do bad things to do the right thing. It made for such an interesting a character conflict with him, and that's I really loved that through this season, because no one's completely right and no one's completely wrong, so you have each character sort of giving their own philosophical ideas about that. And when you have those sort of like warring ideas where everyone's on the same page, they want to do the good thing, but they each have like different ideas of how to do it. It's always compelling in terms of when it comes to like superheroes and comic books and stuff like that. So yeah, like is it okay to kill? If you kill someone, do you remove their ability to rehabilitate? Should we rehabilitate? All that stuff was just so interesting this season. So I'm glad they really touched on that, because that point was what kept me absolutely glued to the screen from episode 1 to episode 8.
Yeah, again, it's very Kirkman. He's done a great job of really staying faithful to his own source material, but he's improved upon it in many ways, or at least added stuff, and then kind of removed a lot of like the fillers essentially. Speaking of which, like expanding upon another aspect I really liked that I did not see coming was the whole Rex and Ray relationship, where because in the comics, Shrinking Ray was a dude, and because he's kind of like an Ant-Man, like Adam ripoff, and in the last season, how she got eaten by one of the snake people. That in the comics, that was it. They just you just got eaten alive and done. Nothing came about it. So it was like, man, that's a really messed up ending for a hero like that. But I'm glad that not only like the gender swap really worked for this character, but the fact that she came back and having experienced something like that. Because superheroes, like, some are gods, some are immortals, like immortal, but they don't really. Not everybody can contemplate death the same way. Some of them are very like I'm back to normal, let's get to it. Others really struggle with it, like a PTSD. And she showed it, especially in that episode after I forgot what fight. Oh, like after Invincible and Cecil hashed it out at Guardians HQ. Duplicate and Immortal are easily the most hated and deplorable characters in my opinion. For those of you who are fans of them, no offense, but they are just such arrogant and just rude characters that they just can't read a room. They're very selfish people. And how she tried to argue like I've died many times, which she's not wrong, but Ray's like, yeah, but I don't have a backup ready to go or ready to survive. And it's like, yeah, exactly. Like like her and Immortal, they deal with death all the time because they've died so many times, whether it be through multiples or him throughout history. But it's like, you guys can always come back. You have come back. That's definitely not the same for everybody else, as we saw with the original Guardians team. The only survivor was Immortal, and that was barely. So, and just, having Ray kind of flesh out Rex, because in the comics, he does get. It's kind of one of those self-realization things, how Adam and Eve, or how Eve and Mark, they get together and stuff. In the comics, he does kind of realize, like, yeah, maybe I've just been a dick, but, with my life growing up, it wasn't. I felt like that's all I had to be. So, but this one, Ray really helped him grow. So that just made his death way more sadder. Because in the comics, it was like, way to go out like a champ. This one was like, God damn it, why'd you have to sacrifice yourself, man? You were getting ready to have a life and possibly be normal. So that it just again just great job by him and Jason Matsoukas returning to voice him. I just really that was another thing I really liked that Kirkman changed about it.
Yeah, that was it was definitely a good decision because I definitely liked the whole Rex character growth in this season, and we got to see that starting from last season, so that's a through line that's carried over. So I've liked how that character has progressed and how he's sort of softened those edges and started trying to relate to people on a more human level and really started opening up to Ray. It made, again, like you mentioned, it made that death so much more powerful, in the sense where he sacrificed himself to save everybody, and where you would think he wouldn't have been that guy. If you watched him, if you just knew him from season one, you wouldn't think he would be the one to make that move. So to see that sort of grow for him from season one to here season three was really good. And then again, it fits into that theme of rehabilitation, and people can get better. That's one of the arguments for it. So yeah, just narratively, thematically, and for the character, it all worked fantastically for Rex, I think. And it's sad to see him go, but I mean, the fact that he got a noble end, I wouldn't have predicted that.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't really change it, at least from what I remember. Again, it has been a while since I've read them, so my memory may be a little foggy of the books. But, um, and the other thing I really appreciate Kirkman doing was with Oliver's character. Just that one little scene where, Mark's mom freaks out because he's not in his room, especially after he just murdered the Mauler twins. And in the comics and in that episode, he's like, I didn't mean to, it just happened. It's like, no, we clearly know he did it on purpose. He just, because he's a little kid, even though he's growing at an accelerated rate, he's still going through all these emotions and mentalities that he doesn't quite get the gravity of everything. So I'm glad that they did that, and I thought it was a really good moment of, how he says, but humans don't live as long, and they're killing each other all the time, so why should I care? But then when they put into perspective, like, well, what happened to me? I'm your mom. Like, what if I died? And he's like, I wouldn't want that to happen. Um, so it's just it's gonna be a very hypocritical thing with him, like very like Mark, it's gonna be a very roller coaster growth for them. They're gonna have their highs, they're gonna have a lot of lows and moments where they mess up a lot. But I just like the scene where he snuck out and he's just hanging out with a couple of skateboarders, man. He's just being a kid, and the kids accept him for who he is. So it was nice to show that he's not just a complete psychopath in a way at that age, where in the comics they kind of stuck with that he was just totally fine with killing. He just wanted to fight all the time. I don't really remember a moment in the books where it's like he's just a normal kid. So I thought that was a really nice thing to add to it. Just such a simple thing that goes a long way for him.
Yeah, it makes him more interesting as a character for sure. If whenever I talked to you about this before, but whenever they introduce a kid into the story, it's always one of those. Oh, I hope they do it well because this can either be really good or really annoying, and I'm glad that we got past that sort of initial brattiness of the Oliver character, and then instead it manifested into him wanting to just like beat up on guys and kill, just to get rid of the problem. But by the end of it, just, him sort of being that person that would, run through a brick wall for Mark. We see that he really loves his brother, and he wants to provide him with as much help as he can. Even just being a little kid is such a cool character because it's like, yeah, it easily could have been some annoying thing, but we see that this kid just wants to do good and he sees his brother and he wants to help him. He has that innate heroism in him, that makes him an interesting and good character. But it's like, yeah, when you grow up with all this power, it's like you can go either way with it. You can either be really dangerous or you can do it for good. And just to have that sort of conversation within a character, it's really cool.
Yeah, again, he's definitely showing like he's almost like an accelerated version of Mark's growth, like struggling with the whole, why should I care about human life, and then why can't people forgive Dad? Because he is Kid Omni-Man. He wants to be known as that, but it's because of Mark and Eve, they realize like you can't go by that. Like that's just too. Essentially, that's a polite way of saying it's too soon to be okay with that. And it's like, but can't people forgive him? It's like, possible, but not right now. So again, he's a kid. He doesn't quite know it yet, but he he got pretty humbled in the last episode. But it's not the end for Kid Omni-Man. There, like he's gonna have a lot of arrogant moments too. Speaking of which, just the fight scenes I think were all very solid throughout this entire season. My favorite ones by far were the prison breakout scene with Alan, Battle Beast, and Nolan, just because it was very well done. Battle Beast is like so many people. He's one of my favorite characters, the Invincible verse. He's gonna have he's gonna have some great moments going forward. And then the other one was the Invincible War in general. I'm sure some people were like, "That's it, that's all it was," and at the same time, I'm like, "Yeah," because I thought it was like when I was reading the comics, I kept seeing videos about it, and I thought it was gonna be a way bigger thing. It honestly, I don't remember it being that massive. It was just, it happened. They struggled, but then because Angstrom Levy, he's kind of proven to be a somewhat incompetent villain. Like he's a monster, but he's just hasn't followed through the last two seasons, like on anything he's done. So I thought that was really well done, and I also really liked Stephen Yoon's voice acting in that yeah, they're all Mark and they're all from different universes and they're all basically evil, but they're different inflections in his voice to really distinguish each character, like the Mohawk one, the yellow and black Omni-Man one. It was just very well done, and of course, the conquest fight. Is episode 8 the best one? I know that's kind of the hype online right now. For me, it's up there. I think it's definitely the second best episode compared to the end of season 1 with just Nolan and Mark going at it. But Conquest by Jeffrey Dean Morgan was just perfect. Perfect. I liked him better definitely than Negan, but that was live action, and he wouldn't be my first choice. But yeah, I loved every fight of those 3 fights are my favorite ones.
Mm-hmm. Even though the fight itself wasn't all that great in terms of just like the battle, I thought the confrontation with Powerplex was very narratively and thematically interesting too. Again, we have another character. It seems like Mark just can't escape this. Where it's like a character that's just created by the very fact that he exists. Like he didn't do anything wrong in his own self, but just sort of the actions that he's found himself involved in are creating these people that resent him just for being who he is. And he didn't want to destroy those cities, but he did have a part in it, and even if he was a victim. So seeing that sort of create this this character that just has a deep hatred for him because of what he did, it was interesting. And the performance by Aaron Paul is always great, but yeah, that character I just found so fascinating. Someone who's just so caught up in their anger and their grief that it just drives him, on that path of revenge that only ends horribly for him, where he loses his kid and his wife, and it's like, yeah, like that's not something Invincible wanted and even planned for, but these are sort of just the unintentional consequences of being a superhero and existing in this world, and it just goes to show this is a world it's hard to live in. It's not an easy one. So that whole storyline with Powerplex, again, even though the fight itself and even the animation at times wasn't the greatest, the story within it was really fascinating. So I just wanted to shout that one out. But yeah, the conquest fight, if you want to call it that, was obviously the cherry on top of this season. Again, it's all the thematic narratives, everything's sort of leading up to this moment. The whole, when is it okay to kill? Is it okay at all? Can someone be rehabilitated? That all gets put to the test, and this final confrontation with this absolute maniac who, even though he is an absolute maniac, that monologue that he gives to him, which I'm sure already is going to be memed all over the place, is very much that think Mark think from the first season. I've seen a lot of people sort of catch on to that, the whole "I'm so lonely" speech. It's a little bit comedic in a sense, but it gives us such an interesting look into that conquest character that I wasn't expecting at all. Because I mean, look, I didn't know that was going to be a guy at all. Like coming in and seeing him throughout the episode, it's like all he's just a blunt object. Just sent at Earth just to create destruction. But when he does give that speech, it gives it another interesting insight into the Viltrumites and their culture. How yeah, he's a tool of destruction, and that's just kind of all he is. Because in a sense, he's a victim of that culture. It's a war culture. It's a very toxic, masculine culture of just like war and destruction. And he even says he's like, I wish I could do more, but I'm just good at destroying things, and that's all they want me for, and they're afraid of me for doing it. And he wants to be more than that, but he can't because that's what Viltrum is. That it doesn't allow him to be anything more than that. So even if he is this evil monster, this bringer of destruction, there's an element to him that's sort of tragic in a sense. So that little narrative flip that they did there was really really interesting, and then again gives us a cool look into, again, coming from someone who hasn't read these comics, insight into the Viltrum and the culture and how it's just sort of manifested itself into this just awful thing where even the people of it are suffering.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it perfectly on the head with Powerplex and how vengeance does not bring anything good. In all honesty, so Powerplex had that coming, but at the same time, I like that it was a very much like a Batman versus Superman moment. That even though he tried to stop the destruction, doesn't matter. You were a part of it. You lived your life. I lost everything from it. At least someone close to me. So, and it's one of those things that no matter what Mark thinks or what he does, you just can't change some people like that. That's kind of, very dramatic and superhero version of like, not everyone's going to like you in your life. You just got to roll with it. So, and Conquest, I wouldn't necessarily say a victim of it. I would just definitely say a product of it, because he is a monster through and through. But that monologue about him feeling lonely, definitely not in the book from what I remember, but it almost adds on to his monstrosity and his insanity, because yeah, like everybody else, he like everyone, we all want to feel some connection to somebody or people in general, but he is essentially the warhound of the Viltrum Empire, especially when he says, there's so many rules and you're not supposed to destroy this, kill them, but I've been sent here to seize Earth by any means necessary, and he reveled in that. But I think it was almost like because Viltrum is they have a war culture, I almost could see that his monologue as a way of like just mentally destroying Mark, trying to say like, hey, I'm lonely too, but you're gonna die knowing that. This is just trying to almost make it seem like, oh, I'm a likable person. It's like, Conquest definitely isn't, but I just loved his introduction. It made Nolan's beatdown on Mark look like nothing, especially when they essentially go through that area that looked like Brazil, and he he didn't wait for a train to do it. He was the train and just destroyed all those people, which I know even watching it, I'm like, it's a little bit much, even though it's an animated show, especially when there's like a part where a little kid is holding his mom, but then Conquest and Mark just completely tear his arm off and kill him. But again, that's the gravity of this universe that most shows and movies won't touch. Like we kind of got on Batman vs Superman, but at the same time, it just kind of like, it happened, move on kind of thing. But yeah, that was very faithful to the comics, and seeing Conquest briefly in season 1 when Nolan was telling Mark his backstory and what Viltrum is like. After reading the comics, I was like, oh my god, I want to see this fight. So it was basically everything I've wanted, and to have again Jeffrey Dean Morgan killed it. I remember I couldn't tell you the other day. I was like, is that Jeffrey Dean Morgan? And you're like, yeah, that's him. I was like, oh shit, I thought it was gonna be the old guy from Breaking Bad. I forget that actor's name, but he ended up being the Brit. So I just that was a really great episode. We got Adam Eve is finally going into her godlike powers, essentially, where she's on the brink of death or dead. Essentially, she's just gonna reconstruct herself, and it was just really cool to see that. She actually had a lot more cooler moments, but they'll kind of come with the territory as she gets older. Like, she's still not like the strongest hero compared to Mark, but the fact that she has like these, she can control atoms is still really cool. So I really liked that. The only thing else that really caught my eye was just that post-credit scene with Damien Darkblood and some random demon. Because to be honest, I don't remember at what point he does get banished or if he was just kind of a side character. But he definitely wasn't as like important as he was in the show. So I'm curious to see how that's going to play out in the next season. Like, who is he trying to summon? What are they going to do? It would be cool if they brought Spawn into this because they're all from Image Comics, but I kind of doubt it. And, I doubt they'll get, oh my God, what's his name for the voice? But he did Goliath. And
Keith David.
Keith David. Yeah, I doubt they're going to get him for that. But if they do, if Keith David does get cast, I'm like, oh my God, it may happen. But yeah, like I said, I love this show, this season overall, and just that conquest fight was the perfect way to end it.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to see what happens with Omni-Man and Alan. We know they're out there. We know they're on their way back. The prison break sequence was really cool, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens when they do return, especially with everything that's happened while they've been gone. Mark and Oliver and Debbie. How they've sort of been moving on in their lives, especially with Debbie. Now having a new relationship with a guy who's super dripped out for no reason. He's got all the swag on him. He's great. He's a good guy. She deserves it.
Debbie's a good-looking woman. He's trying to impress her and her sons. Especially when she's got gods for sons. It's like, yeah, I better be dripping swagoo and being on my best behavior. So yeah, 100%.
He's got the chains, he's got the watch. They may have superpowers, but he's got super style. All right, that's his superpower.
And he is a realtor, so he's got to impress the clients as well.
Exactly. But yeah, it's going to be interesting how that family dynamic shifts when those guys return. So yeah, very much looking forward to all that, and of course, what happens with Mark's relationship with Cecil and how they sort of go about that, knowing that these Viltrumites are coming. Is everyone going to be prepared for that? So yeah, very much looking forward to whatever comes next.
Yeah, hopefully we don't have to wait another 2 years. I guess technically, yeah, Invincible ended. Did it end early last year? Yeah, it ended early last year, so it came back 2023 technically, right? If my memory serves me right.
Yeah, it did.
Okay, well, hopefully, again, we won't have to wait another 2 years or something. I mean, I think Kirkman and Amazon got enough flack for not only the 2-year break, but then also the mid-season one. So hopefully we get a lot sooner because, yeah, we're at this point in the comics, things are really starting to move forward. There's going to be a lot more stuff with Viltrum. Definitely got to keep an eye on some heroes right now. I'm not going to say specifically who, but if you read the comics like I did, we all know what's coming, and it's going to just get messy and dark. So, yeah, can't wait for it. But for those of you who did have... before we finish up, anything else you want to talk about Burn, before we finish up?
No, I mean, that was pretty much it. Like, I've been really enjoying the show, excited to see what comes in, and as someone who doesn't know what's to come, hearing you say that is very exciting because the way they've handled the darker aspects of the show, I thought they've done a really good job of it. So yeah, interesting to see how they continue to flip the whole superhero genre on its head.
Yeah, I wish you read it, but at the same time, like, I don't want to spoil anything for you. So, and same with everybody. I don't want to spoil everything for anybody because, again, I really like the Invincible verse. It's definitely up there with some of my favorite comics possible. But for those of you who did happen to watch this season, feel free to put your thoughts down in the comments. We'd love to get your guys' thoughts on that. Until next time, everyone, got a lot more movies. April is going to be a big movie month for us. So until next time, everyone, stay bodacious and keep on ranting for us.
Absolutely, everybody. Be good, be safe, and as always, we'll catch y'all on the next one.